Hello again, I'm Joel Fadley, and we're going to look at week number 6. Interesting case here about you giving advice as a consultant to a man named Matthew who has hired a young couple to run a small motel and cafe many miles away, many hours away. And it's a great little case concerning internal control. And we've been talking about internal control a lot in this course, which is important because that's something you as managers in all aspects of business have to be concerned with, is making sure you got proper controls in place. You got your policies, you got procedures, obviously that drive your business. So let me share the content out here for this particular week. And here we are at week 6, module 6. We'll click on this case and go through that here shortly. I do have a couple other items out here I want you to take a look at. One of them is account reconciliations and underappreciated control, how true that is. I think sometimes we look at the final toll gate, if you want to call it that, the final check and balance is what we do with reconciliations. And that's something that's a big part of the accounting function in any company. First and foremost, your bank reconciliations, reconciling your bank statement that comes in externally from your banking institution. And that's got to be reconciled, that balance, with what is on your general ledger for cash. It's a long, tedious process. It's very important that you reconcile your book to balance, your book to ledger balance. That can show you a lot of things that might be askew with controls. You obviously can see checks that have cleared the bank, who they actually were written to, and who cashed the check. So it really is a final gate that can really create a lot of control in your company. Also, just reconciliations in general as to how you came up with revenue accruals, going all the way back to the WorldCom case with Monrev. You remember that term for fake revenue that was being generated. This particular case, you got some funny stuff going on here that we'll get into with, again, revenue recognition, which I think we know more than 6% of the fraud committed has to do with revenue. I do have a link here for internal controls, and this is ETSU's version. We looked at Michigan Tech, we looked at Kansas State, and now we're looking at ETSU's. A little bit different format. A lot of these drop-down menus. We've been looking at control activities. In those other websites, and there ETSU very succinctly talks about these control activities. Physical control of assets, safeguarding of assets, another term for that. Segregation of duties or functions, having multiple people involved with various processes in your company. Authorization and approvals, who's authorized, who can approve, whether it's journal entries or purchase orders or whatever it might be, and having adequate documentation to support whatever it is you're doing with your journal entries and how those journal entries impact your general ledger. And of course, independent performance review. So this is just a link I wanted to share with you. We go back to week 6, and I think I'm still sharing that. What we have here with Red Bluff Inn, let me go ahead and download this file and talk briefly about it. Cannot be found. Wonder where that is. Let's see. All right, let me see if I can find that again. There we go. Okay, make this a little bit larger. Red Bluff Inn and Cafe, establishing effective internal control in a small business. Again, very important. You've got someone who is an absent owner that has hired a young couple to manage their business. It's a cafe, it's a small motel. And this Case gives you a lot of free will to sort of be creative and what you think are some things that should be done. If you're the owner, what would you want to see implemented based on your knowledge of internal control practices? We looked at CASO, these links to ETSU, Michigan Tech, and K-State. They're similar. How do you implement some of those controls? Safeguarding of assets. How do you have a separation of functions? You know, a husband and wife, this young couple, it's two people. You can't have the husband do one thing and the wife do another. I mean, they're really one. So don't think that one's going to do one thing and one another. Checks and balances. You're going to have to be more creative. But looking at this case here, I like what they say here, using common sense and creativity to create or generate internal control suggestions that will effectively and efficiently reduce potential for fraud. So this is some management, some MBA terms here, effective and efficient. You want to have effective controls, meaning it mitigates risk. It's difficult to completely eliminate risk. You want to mitigate risk. And you want these to be effective controls, but you want them to be efficient, right? Materiality plays in the case here. You want to be efficient in how you control what goes on, because you don't want the controls to be so burdensome that they really cut into your bottom line performance. And that's where it's a give and take between being effective and being efficient. I think I've used the example before that at Exide we shipped about 30,000 batteries a day, which is the equivalent of about 30 truckloads going out of our facility to customers. And we were more concerned about controls for a truckload leaving our facility without being reported, being stolen, what have you, than we are about someone walking off with a battery. Now, we don't want employees to walk off with a battery, but if somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning on break takes the battery and off the shelf and through the back of the facility, pushes it under the fence and comes by later in their car and picks it up, it's not as big a concern from my viewpoint as the safeguarding of assets when you're talking about a truckload that's worth $50,000. So obviously you don't want certain things to happen, but you got to mitigate the risk, but you don't want to be so effective that they are grossly inefficient. So keep those in mind here. Sometimes cameras can do a lot for you. And just the fact you got cameras will probably lessen the risk of some things that go on. Yeah, a small motel, 18 room, Southern Utah. They need your advice. So you as an MBA executive, they want your advice here. They're going to be hiring and supervising 4 or 5 part-time personnel, cleaning rooms, cooking, waiting on customers. How you gonna maintain records of these rooms rented, right? Of course, now you got a lot of stuff online that can control that, the whole key mechanisms and so forth. How are they gonna pay? Who's gonna make the deposits? Who's going to record those deposits, right? Remember, when you got someone taking cash in and recording it, you got some real issues there of control. How do you tie the renting of the rooms with the cash or credit card payments coming in? And then you start talking about restaurants here. What's your concerns there with what can go wrong in a restaurant? I mean, people stealing 10-pound hunks of meat. You're probably not going to, again, being efficient and effective, you're probably not going to be concerned about a bag of iceberg lettuce, but you are going to be concerned about a 10-pound block of ham or turkey or whatever it might be. So some things probably should be inventoried and accounted for. How do you keep stuff from being stolen out of the rooms? How do you keep them from this couple that's running things? How do you keep them from allowing certain friends of theirs to eat free? Right? Sometimes at local restaurants, I know Subway does this, they'll have a sign up that says, if we don't give you a receipt, you get a free cookie. very simple, and they're not just being nice about it. The owners have probably decided that they want to make sure every transaction is recorded, and so if someone is pocketing the money there without actually ringing it up, so there's different things you can do there. Maybe gift cards to customers that you don't provide receipts for, because that receipt, then the mechanism there also is recording all of the transactions. There's just a lot of stuff you can think about here, and it's a good opportunity for you to use some of your creativity. That's a word we don't use in accounting very often, or business, from a control standpoint, but you need to be creative. So the 4 questions here, and again, I would structure the paper to address these 4 questions, like Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, so you can succinctly put this in one area, and it's easy for me to follow if you fully have answered these questions in the case. The first one is, what are your 2 biggest concerns related to possible fraud on the part of the couple for the motel side of the business? What are 2 or 3 controls that could effectively reduce risk related to your concerns? If you want to put more than 2 or 3, that's fine. But again, use common sense and be creative. And then they've broken this out into the cafe side. What's your 2 biggest concerns relating to possible fraud for the cafe business? Generate 2 or 3 controls could effectively reduce risk related to your concerns. Again, with that whole being effective, but yet being efficient. And then number 3, describe the impact each proposed control would have on the efficiency of running the business. There it is. Are the controls you generated both effective, and are they efficient? All right. And then finally, describe the potential impact of your proposed controls on the morale of the couple in charge of the day-to-day operations. How can Matthew deal with your concerns? Yeah, obviously, if you've got cameras everywhere watching what's going on, how does this young couple who's overseeing this, how do they feel about it? They're managers, but yet the owners don't trust them. But again, maybe you put these controls in place, like cameras that are there before you kick off operations. Probably need to do background checks on everyone that's being hired. Very important. You're dealing with cash a lot of times, maybe with food, maybe hotel rooms, motel rooms. You can limit that to credit card only. But how do you keep the morale from going down? Maybe you have these controls in place, written procedures to follow, that they understand that there needs to be a segregation of functions, segregation of duties. You need someone locally there, like hire a CPA firm, maybe not a CPA firm, hire a bookkeeping firm. You know, bookkeeping's really taken off here the last few years. Hire a bookkeeping firm to keep your records. I don't know that you need a CPA firm. Be expensive to do that. Just a bookkeeper who's going to keep up with transactions on a daily basis. Maybe you have someone who sort of oversees or looks in on what's going on a regular basis. If Matthew, the owner here, cannot travel down to see what's going on, he probably can't. So a lot of good stuff here. To feel free to do some other research on this topic. But it's a good case. Again, we're kind of running the gamut here from your WorldComs and waste managements all the way down to your auto parts type environment, mid-size, smaller to mid-size, small medical practice. And now we've got this small business owner. So good luck. And again, as always, please email me if you don't understand something here or what's expected. But I think this case is probably a little bit more clear than the others. So I wish you well.